What's up, everybody? Doing another episode of the Saturday Artist Live interviews. And today we have Jacob Wayne Bryner. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. And I'm going to invite him right now. Going.
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good. How you been doing this Thanksgiving?
Oh, just trying to stay warm. It's a little chilly, that's all. Just relaxing.
I feel that.
So, yeah.
So why don't you introduce yourself and what kind of art you do?
Sure. My name is Jacob Wayne Bryner. I'm a painter. I do what I like to call social pop surrealism. So, social for the kind of interactive commentary I do. Might even call it political art sometimes. Pop, because it's just like colorful, almost cartoonish. And then surrealism, because it's, yeah, surreal. So,
Oh, it definitely is.
yeah.
How did you get started in art?
Oh, my mother's a painter, and so I think she encouraged it early on. She would just kind of give me a stack of paper while she was busy with work, and like let me just kind of sit there and draw. And I guess I would sit there and do it for hours, which may or may not be common for little kids. But so I've always kind of sketched and drew, and then I Wes Borland, the guitar player of Limp Bizkit, I found out that he was a painter, and I saw some of his paintings, and I was like really into that when I was a teenager. So I started to paint, and yeah, that was 2002. I've just been doing it ever since.
Wow, so 20 years now.
Yeah, it's been a while.
That's an incredible career. You can definitely tell in your work that there's been a lot of time put into that. So how do you choose your colors? Because your works are extremely colorful, but I notice there always seems to be a consistent theme, maybe? Is there any process behind how you choose?
Hmm. Let me think about that. Um, I don't know. I guess not really. I just really like colorful stuff, and so I think I've just always naturally understood color theory and how it works and the interplay, like, orange contrast blue, that kind of concept. And just so I know how it's going to work out, you either stick with a concept early on where you're like, I'm going to use every color I can on this piece. And then sometimes it's like, all right, I've done a bunch of colorful ones. I'm going to do some that are like all in the same vein. So I only use red, orange, yellow in this one and like kind of restrict myself that way. But I think beyond that, I don't think about it too hard. But
Hmm.
yeah.
So what got you into surrealist art?
Oh, I just, I don't know. I like artwork that's a little bizarre, almost dreamlike. Um, I think cartoons probably do have a lot to do with that. Like when I was young, I was very into stuff like Rocco's Modern Life and Ren and Stimpy and stuff that was just like kind of off kilter. Like I so like a lot of people like symmetry in their art, and I like kind of like asymmetrical stuff, like just for things to not totally line up, some to be on the wrong side of the hand, things like that. Just because that in and of itself kind of makes you think. So
Hmm.
yeah, I think that's why I
It
like
breaks
it.
that barrier down of what you're used to expecting from art, and then just completely subverts it, where your brain actually has to work to think about it.
Yeah, and obviously I'm like I can be an argumentative guy. So when I was young, my like I mentioned, my mother was a painter, and she would always like, this is the right way to do this, and I'd be like, oh yeah, like I'm gonna do the opposite thing. And it's the same thing with art teachers. Like I had one art teacher that was like, for shading, try not to ever use black, try to use dark blues because it makes it look more realistic. But all I heard was never use black, and I was like, well, that's exactly what I'm gonna base all my artwork around. So if you look at my earliest work for the first 5 years, everything had like a really thick black outline, and that's just me being kind of a jerk. It's just not listening. But like,
It takes that rebellious spirit sometimes.
yeah. But then as I got older, I was like, oh, she had a point. That, yeah, okay, it does look this way if you don't use it, but had to try, you know.
So I noticed you talked about some like almost political stuff that you do as well. Like, what would you say it like your message is usually uh, for that?
Oh, I think broadly just anti-authoritarianism, probably along the same lines as what I was just talking about. Like, I have to. Like, no, I don't. And
Hmm.
like, thanks, but no thanks. And that probably comes out really clearly as like anti-Trump stuff, which I am. But I mean, I've been one of the earliest things I would do is just like do like political art cartoons, kind of like you would see in the newspaper. Just like exaggerated characteristics of politicians and stuff. And when I was in high school and getting in trouble as a young man, like that was the beginning of George Bush Jr.'s administrations, and yeah, I just never liked them. And I mean, that's not to say I don't have my issues with the Democratic Party and other politicians around the world, but obviously they seem to be the most anti-art, in my opinion, and
Hmm.
self-expression. So that's kind of where I tend to aim my criticism. But yeah, I don't know. Like I think I'll probably always do stuff like that, but 2016 to 2020 kind of wore me out. Like
Yeah.
I was doing all this like art that was commenting on things going on, and I just was like keeping me in a negative headspace. So lately, I've just been like doing pet portraits and like colorful stuff that's like just more positive, which I guess is where I'm trying to stay at with my artwork. But you know, you got to go with the flow.
So how did your art style evolve?
So that whole thick black line thing changed. I was like, I really like hinged on that for a long time. And I was like, no, that's like my thing. Like, that's how people would even recognize what I'm doing. And to be fair, like, the first 10 years or so of painting, I was living in Logan, Utah. And so a lot of the artwork that was around was like hand cart impressionism, painting the mountains. So my stuff really stuck out easily. And then when I moved to China for a year, it was kind of hard to keep up with painting, but I did a little bit of that and I stood out. Then I moved to Seattle, and suddenly my stuff wasn't that unique anymore. And I was like, oh, I'm having a harder time like standing out because it's like there's a lot of really colorful, expressive stuff up there. And so I think the early years of living in Seattle, I just slowly started painting what I want to paint more and not thinking as hard about what my style is and just trying a whole bunch of stuff. Like I started throwing paint, like one of my favorite paintings. There was like a giant storm coming through Seattle, and I just like went out, was like dipping canvas in the rainwater and like bringing it inside and like splattering paint on it and just moving it around, like trying to be as like free form as possible. But um, yeah, I went through that dirty pour phase with acrylics and tried everything, and I've kind of like dialed it back in that it's like, all right, color's the biggest aspect I think of what I'm into, and so trying to experiment along those lines and just become a better painter, like actually tighten it up a little bit with the brush. So yeah.
Did traveling to China have any influence on your art that you can see, or was it more of like a journey type thing?
That was just important for me, like just in general life stuff, like go to the other side of the world and survive and work. And I was like an English teacher out there. But I guess that's what's funny is as I get older, the thing that keeps coming back, it's like I've always like kind of had a hard time keeping down a main career path, this and that. But everybody's like, "Oh, well, you're just an artist. You're fine. Go paint." It was like the same over there. Like they're like,
Hmm.
"You want to teach like an art class at this high school?" I was like, sure." And I started teaching an art class, and then they didn't have any supplies for me to use. That's like, oh, like you want me to just like talk
Oh,
about it? Like they're like, yeah. I was like, oh, okay. So it was kind of funny. I was teaching an art class, but it was more like just a Western culture class, and I don't know, man. I don't feel like I got a lot of painting done while I lived there, which was part of the reason I came back. Like I was missing it, and like getting the
hmm.
supplies I needed wasn't as easy, and the government's pretty restrictive over there as well, and so I was like, nope, coffee and rain and Seattle sounds nice. I'm gonna go there for a while. So yeah, it just once again just reinforcing the I don't like being told what to do.
And that's probably why we vibe so well. I because I just love your art, and I'm always like checking through my Instagram feed to see some of your stuff. And so, like, I noticed you do lots of animal portraits. Is that something that you intentionally did, or something you fell into?
Okay, so I had painted people's pets before, but they were all kind of a little more surreal, doing kind of just various style stuff. Still, like me being stubborn, like I'm gonna do it my own way, and they're like, okay. And then when I was living in Seattle, I was living with my good friends Devin and Sarah, and they had a cat named Chief, and I love that cat. It's probably my favorite cat of all time. And I just, I'd take photos of the cat, just like, look at him, looking all regal. And I was like, oh, there's these paintings that you've maybe seen them. They're like palette knife paintings that are like just pure color,
Hmm.
and it's like a rainy street kind of thing. And I was like, I just love that style. So I was like, okay, what I'm gonna do is do a portrait of Chief and not use any black, white, gray, or brown, and you have to construct it all through just color layering. So rainbow style sort of. And so I did that painting, and then it just blew up. Like people are like, "Oh, holy shit! I love this one. This is like my favorite thing you've done." And then maybe I could get one of my cat or my dog, and I was just like, did I really just like wait over 10 years to just do this? Like, of course, people want paintings of their pets. Like, I can do this cool surreal stuff, which I will always do and love to do, but like, okay, yeah, they liked my Trump as Pennywise painting, but nobody wants to hang that up in their home, and I completely understand. They're just like, yeah, it's great, but not. It bums me out. Painting of my dog, yeah, I love it. And you're like, oh, okay, so I just kind of blew up. I guess the first one was 2016, I'm pretty sure. And that's been really good. It's helped expand the art thing quite a bit.
Is there any like specific process that you go through as you're painting uh, a colorful what's the word I'm looking for? Portrait of an animal rather than doing your regular surrealism stuff? Is there a different process behind those?
Oh, yeah. A lot more like fretting about it because then you're painting somebody's essentially family member.
Hmm.
They know all the details of that face, so yeah, I've had a couple people be like, "This is really great, but the ears are a little too big, or this one eye is a little off." And yeah, it stresses me out. It's just getting the faces right. So it's a lot more measurement early on. Normally, yeah, it's like we'll just like throw paint down on the canvas and just go, and a bunch of happy accidents. Like, well, that's not quite what I intended, but whatever. I'll make it look cool. And with pet portraits, it's a lot more measurements up front. I like a consistent visual language with them, so when people send me like source photos, I'm like, that's a great photo, but it's from a certain angle, So if I do it with my flat color backgrounds like I do, it's going to make them look like they're floating in nothingness, and it's not going to look right. It's like it's a lot more precision and planning, but beyond that, with my pet portraits, I just try to use every color I got, at least a little bit, even if it's like, okay, I haven't used dark green yet, just a little bit here. And it, there is a whole kind of big process to that. Whereas when it's like just surreal stuff, I'm like, ah, great, it's playtime. I get to do whatever I want.
I totally feel that. So, have you noticed? To me, it seems like I don't know. Maybe it's just kind of obvious and it's just everywhere. But there's very much a difference between like how many views and likes you're going to get for like an animal thing versus like something that's totally creative. So, have you ever noticed the kind of a disparity? Or, that's the right word. Kind of a unequalness between absolutely original stuff and stuff that looks similar to other people.
Oh, absolutely. Um, Being on social media, I mean, it's kind of like a love hate thing because from the earliest days of MySpace, that was how I started selling paintings and stuff. Like, you can only upload 5 images, and that's all you get. So like, make sure it's your best stuff. And so from very early on, I am kind of fascinated by like the numbers and like analytics of all the stuff. And so I've always played with it. And like even with pet portraits, I noticed that your numbers and likes will go up if you take a picture with your own artwork, like if you show your face. And how you do it, if you do it outside in nature, the likes go up. And so like playing with that, like just it is really funny how just putting your face in there with your own artwork will get more likes than the artwork itself. And if it's a controversial piece, you'll get more likes. Like, so if I'm criticizing Trump, it'll go up. But say just something really just weird, like some creature just out of my brain, no likes.
Feel
Like,
that.
they're like, I don't know. So, and you'll talk to people and they'll be like, oh, that new one was really great. And you're like, hey, didn't like it. I didn't.
Right?
Yeah, it's funny. Like, it's something about that. I think it's like people want to throw their support behind things through social media, whereas like whether they liked it or not in their own mind, they may or may not react to it. If that's
Mm.
put it, I think.
Now, how has your uh, strategy for marketing evolved over the years? What's some stuff that you do and don't do now?
Hmm. I don't think it's too complicated, although I think I've made a lot of tiny adjustments. Definitely making prints available where I can. Um, that kind of helps like a piece that, as the cost of everything goes up, then suddenly what you could normally sell a painting for doesn't quite get you by as much as it does now. And but I mean, some old piece from 2008 can keep bringing in a little bit of something, take care of a phone bill, and that's pretty great. And just yeah, having a piece exist like in multiple places at once is pretty cool. So just like trying to get, so I guess in relation to that is getting better photos taken of them. I think early on I was just like, yeah, whatever, just snap a quick one, throw it up on social media, try to sell the main piece. And now when I look back at like the first 10 years of my stuff, I'm like, that is a terrible photo of my artwork. Like, I was so excited to share it that I was taking a photo of it like late at night when I finished it, like indoor lighting, not holding the camera still, things like that. So getting good photos of your work and making it available. Beyond that, it just becomes like knowing when to say no. Like somebody hits you up and they want a piece and they're like, okay, I know you do this, this, and that, but I want you to do an ultra realistic painting of my house. And you're like, no, that's not me. Like, I have other artist friends I can refer you to that can do that. because you won't be happy with the painting. I won't be happy making the painting. It's just no, and just like not say yes to every offer you get, and um, make sure you get paid for your work up front before you send it to people.
Yeah, I've learned that lesson the hard way.
Yeah, I think every artist that's the moment you're like, oh yeah, just send it to me and I'll pay you later.
Hmm.
Okay, it happens. And you're like, okay, never again.
For real. Has like social media influenced how you do your art now? Since it's kind of like it's got like that feedback loop of being in direct contact with your audience. Have you noticed any direction that you're going in that you wouldn't have gone in if you didn't have social media?
Um, I think only in the sense that's kind of like why I call my art social pop surrealism is because it's how it does interact with people, and I'm just used. That's kind of ironic, as I was saying, no one to say no. I tend to say yes to as much as I can, and it's just knowing the difference. So it is fun when somebody's like, "What if you did this crazy wild painting that was like this?" And like, yeah, all right, I'll have that done in a couple days, and it's kind of fun to blow people's mind that way. Like just some silly idea they came up with, and you're like, "No, I can see it. I let's do that painting." Like my one friend Michael Linford, we were like hanging out at a party, just joking around, and there was a self-help book on the table called How to Win Friends and Influence People, and we were just laughing about that title. And he's like, "Yeah, it should be like me, shirtless and buff on the cover. Like that's how you do it." And we're like, "Nah, it'll be you, shirtless and buff, but like hugging another version of you, shirtless and buff." And then there's like, and we're all giggling and laughing. And we're like, "Yeah, that's good." Anyway, we'll just move on. I was like, "No, I'm gonna paint that." And I painted it for him and just gave it to him for his birthday. This is back in 2010, I think. And yeah, I just loved having done that painting, and people are like what? Like what does it mean? And you just it's how to win friends and influence people. Just move along and on to the next one. Like and so yeah, the humor of posting that on social media and making people react to it, and that definitely is part of it. Sometimes the painting purely exists almost as like me making a meme, and
Hmm.
like people laugh or chuckle at this one or be confused. And yeah, that'll happen sometimes. You do a painting, you're like, oh, this one's gonna get them. I don't know, and just nothing. They're like, no, that's a good piece, good job. And you're like, oh, I thought that was gonna piss everybody off. It didn't.
Right.
Yeah,
I like what you brought up with it kind of being like memes because when you think about it, art is like the original meme. That we create them and then we hope that eventually it'll go viral and people will buy it and buy the prints of it. But
yeah,
a lot of times it just kind of sits there, like you get like a few likes from your friends, and like, that's
yeah.
nice.
That's
But
keep you going.
yeah.
Old school meme paintings.
So like, what artists influenced you uh, throughout time?
Artists or just art in general or both?
I would say your favorite artists and your favorite art style.
Okay. Um, so surrealism. I also like cubism to a degree and abstracts. Um, but a lot of like the Mexican muralist painters that I always regret that I don't memorize their names better. But like, yeah, like politically tinged muralism, which just like you can look at a huge piece and there's like all this stuff going on, but there's this undercurrent theme that you can easily pick up on, like, oh, this is a depiction of a revolution, or this is a depiction of just the working class being downtrodden. So um, early on, it was Wes Borland, Limp Bizkit guitar player. I know that comes with some baggage. People are like, Limp Bizkit, like what? Go look at Wes Borland's paintings. They're amazing and not even attached to that band at all, whether you like them or not. And so Westmoreland early on, huge influence. Then, kind of standards like Van Gogh, uh, Pablo Picasso, but two artists that are huge influences on me, and one is really hard to find, unfortunately, is Bob Pepper. He would do these really colorful psychedelic book covers in like the 70s and stuff, and like even did the artwork for a board game, um, Dark Tower, which kind of like, I don't know. Anyway, Dark Tower board game 70s. And he, I get so mad how hard it is to find his work. So, like, very early on, I would paint some of the artwork from Dark Tower, the board game. A early piece of mine, Casino Dragon, is pretty much directly lifted from him. And then another artist is Irving Norman, who's I also got a little bit of my art style concept from, is social surrealism, because he was always commenting in the 1950s about industrialization and the rise of fascism in Europe and all this stuff. And he made these gigantic pieces, like maybe not gigantic, but really big pieces, and just they would be like skyscrapers, and inside every single window is a scene of something happening,
Oh, that's cool.
just cooking or somebody like making love, and then all this other stuff. So you could just get lost in those paintings. And I think each one would take him about 5 years to complete, which I hope
Wow.
that one day I can get to a point where I'm comfortable enough to like have a space where I can keep a piece that takes that long. The closest I got is one piece I did called Gum, and had a giant slab of wood, and I worked on that for over 3 years, like off and on. And that was like purely to just be like, all right, got to get in my Irving Norman mode. So, uh, once again, a guy I think is highly underappreciated. Just saw some of his works in person at Utah State University. They just brought a couple pieces into the art museum while I was attending school there. And it was kind of funny. My one Mormon buddy, who I wouldn't think would be into it because it's kind of controversial, dark stuff, but he's like, "Oh, you're gonna love this, so let's go. Like, this is absolutely your stuff." And so he was right. So Irving Norman, Bob Pepper, Westmoreland.
I'm definitely gonna have to check out those artists, see
Yeah,
all their work. I like the idea of being able to, yeah, one day spend at least 5 years on one painting. But man, I have so much problems even finishing anything that takes more than a week.
right.
Someone's like, I want to get it done now. I want to get it over with.
Is like being able to let a piece just sit and not feel this nagging obligation to finish it. It's just like, nope, it's there, and I'll know when I'm done with it. That kind of a thing. And just having a space where you can make a mess. So, like, I want to throw a bunch of red paint at this today, and some of it's going to get on the floor. I don't have to think about it. That's just what I want to do. Flick it, and then just, all right, I'm not going to mess with it. Just let that paint dry for a couple of weeks, and I'll get back to it. That's the dream.
How long does it typically take you for one of your pieces?
Um, about 8 hours,
8 hours? Okay.
give or take. On
Would
that.
you say that you work fast, or do you try to kind of hone in on detail?
Sorry, say that again.
Do you try to like work fast, or do you like to like slow down and work on the detail?
Um, I'm always trying to learn to be more patient, but I like to work fast. Like, because there's something about capturing it in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like sometimes if I work on a piece too long, it's lost a little bit of the zhuzh. It's like, okay, now it's just a piece I worked a long time on rather than like this big, like, colorful expression
Mm-hmm.
that just kind of poured out. So, yeah, I constantly debate that. It's like how long to really take on something, because obviously, on the flip side of what we're talking about, if you take forever on a piece, you can just detail it as much as you want, and then it's super detailed and realistic, and I don't know, it loses a little bit of that initial fire.
Hmm. So where can people find your stuff online?
Um, Instagram, Facebook, my website, I never keep up on it, but you can use that. That's artjwb.com. That's a hashtag I pollute the internet with everywhere. And,
Feel that.
my link tree, artjwb. So sell prints at Fine Art America, Redbubble. I'm all over the internet. So you can just look up Jacob Wayne Bryner or Art JWB.
Awesome. It was great talking to you, Jacob. We'll have to have you on again at some point.
Oh yeah, anytime, man. I really feel honored that you would want to even talk to me. So
Of course, man.
yeah,
Have a great day.
yeah, you have a good one. Bye bye.
Goodbye. It was great having Jacob on the podcast with us today, and tune in with us next week for I don't remember who it is. It's been such a long day, but I'll see you guys next week, and definitely go check out some of Jacob's stuff at ArtJWB here on Instagram, and you can find his link tree there. And when I put this on YouTube, I will put his links in the description. So, peace, y'all.